Hi, everybody. My name is Andrew Crocker, speaking to you on behalf of the OTC, Ozarks Technical Community College, Social Sciences Department, and Politically Active, a student organization here at OTC. We are meeting with you, if I may share my screen for just a brief moment. We are meeting with you to introduce you to all the candidates we have for this SPS Board of Education. There are 3 vacancies this coming April, and there are 7 candidates for those 3 vacancies. Vote for any 3 candidates you see fit. This is the part of a coalition led by the League of Women Voters, broadcast by several entities, but broadcast on the radio by KSMU Ozarks Public Radio. Once again, we are associated, me and Cara Griffin, with the Ozarks Technical Community College Social Sciences Department. This is for a municipal election coming up on Tuesday, April 6th. Last day to register is March 10th. Make sure that you're registered so that you can participate. If you have any voting questions, please contact the Greene County Clerk's office. Now, this is going to be an audio interview for the radio, so I am only taking a moment to scroll through the candidates. If you are watching this on video on any of our member websites, pause the video now to get the information on the candidates that you care about. My apologies that we can't take more time to introduce everybody. All these interviews will be put on several websites starting March 21st. KSMU.org, thelibrary.org, LWVSWMO.org, and other coalition member websites. No part of this recording may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, without the written permission of the copyright holder. And with no further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our very first candidate that will be speaking with us this afternoon. That's Danielle Kincaid. Ma'am, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
We have lots of excellent questions, and because we have so many candidates, we will only be able to ask some of them. So I just encourage that while you introduce yourself to voters, that you try to do it as succinctly as possible. Number one, what is your vision for education in our community? What unique skills or backgrounds do you feel you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. And thank you to all the organizations who are hosting this today to give our voters an informed picture of all the candidates. My name is Danielle Kincaid, and I am running for Springfield Public School Board of Education. I'm a small business owner here in town. I have a small law firm, so I'm also an attorney by trade. Those 2 things, along with my background serving on the SPS Foundation Board, make me the most qualified candidate for the position on the school board. I bring a unique perspective in that I have a passion for education. I know how to work on a budget. I opened my firm right before the pandemic hit, so I understand how to pivot and pivot again. And I look forward to ensuring that our education system engages in COVID recovery over the next year.
Let me ask you about that specifically, ma'am, because school districts continue to be faced with decision-making issues in response to the COVID pandemic. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education, my apologies, in addressing these challenges?
I think it's important to support our educators and our teachers. They have had such a strange job over the last year, as have our students and our parents, making sure that we're supporting them, making sure that everybody feels safe re-entering schools, and also with the new superintendent, making sure that that individual is given the support that they need as well.
We need to get into the superintendent question here in just a moment, but before we do, discuss something that you think SPS did right and something that you see as an area for improvement in their virtual learning plan that they've had to adopt.
Sure. I don't envy any decision maker over the last year who was in a position to have to learn on the fly about COVID. That's my job as an attorney, is to take information, process it, and come up with a game plan. You're not going to make everybody happy. I appreciate that the board gave parents and students options, whether that was to come back to school part-time or to engage completely in remote learning. Those options were important. I do think that more communication would have been helpful. And I do want, as a board member, to ensure that we've got communication from the district to the educators, to the parents, to the students, and that we're listening to everybody's input before making decisions.
Ma'am, let's circle back to the new superintendent. As you had just mentioned, a new superintendent will be chosen by SPS this spring. What qualities should that leader possess? And what's an issue you feel the new leader should tackle first?
Yeah, so the Board of Education, of course, is tasked with hiring that new superintendent. The board has one employee, and that is the superintendent, and making sure that that superintendent has a background in education and hopefully in management as well. Making sure that they are connected to all the key stakeholders and that they feel connected to all of the schools, going out and listening to the people who are on the ground doing that hard work, which are the teachers, and supporting them in any way that we can. I think probably the very first thing the superintendent will do again will be engaging in that COVID recovery, which encompasses so many different pieces, including the social and emotional well-being of our students and our teachers.
Absolutely. How might the city council work with the school district to address educational disparities, where in particular school success is tied to where you live within the city?
Yeah, I have been endorsed by the chamber, and I think part of that is the fact that our education system cannot just be a concern or a priority of teachers and students and parents. It has to be made a priority of our entire community. Having a good education system not only attracts quality teachers, as long as we're paying them competitively, but it also attracts new businesses and people who want to move into our community. Having that communication and that open line of communication between the chamber, business owners, city council, all of our key stakeholders and the community is going to be very important.
So we do have a couple questions about the people we will be staffing our schools with. First of all, what's your opinion on the ongoing diversity and inclusion training for SPS staff? This could apply to Springfield Public Schools proper or the council concerning SPS.
Sure. So that obviously has been made a priority of the district to prioritize those strategies to educate on equity and diversity. And I support that. How that looks, that's something that's not my background by trade. So listening to those people who have the background and that are the experts in that field is going to be important. Again, I'm not the expert, but I know the questions to ask. I know that questions need to be asked, and then following up with how that training was done and if there's room for improvement.
As far as consistency is concerned, a majority of teachers end up leaving the profession within 5 years of starting. What is your plan, if you have one, for retaining teachers in SPS?
Teaching is an incredibly difficult job, and kudos to all the teachers who have the heart and the passion for entering that career field. Not only does the community need to support teachers, we need to make sure that we are paying them a competitive salary, not only locally, but statewide, so that we attract the best teachers, because ultimately those teachers are spending time with our future workforce and training our future workforce, making sure that we're supporting all of the teachers and all of the students, regardless of their needs.
Ma'am, we have a little under 2 minutes left, and I'll give you a fist here with when we're down to 30 seconds. Just last question. If elected, what background of knowledge will you bring to the Board of Education that will benefit the students and staff of Springfield Public Schools?
My background, I am a product of public education. I appreciate our public education system and know that we've got to support our teachers and our parents and our students. Like I said, I'm an attorney by trade. I know how to process lots of information and come up with a game plan moving forward. I know how to listen to different sides and mediate so that we can reach a common ground that's helpful for everybody. I'm also a small business owner, so I know how to budget. I know how to read budgets. When listening and participating and going to school board meetings, a big chunk of that is budgeting. Not only looking at, are there inefficiencies in the budget, but also are there ways that we can increase the money that's coming in, whether that be through state or federal funding or also through our launch program. So those key things will be very important to any school board member. I think it's wonderful that we've got so many people interested in serving our community. Just hope that the voters choose to vote for me, and I appreciate all the support that I can get.
Danielle Kincaid, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck going forward.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it.
You bet. And now I'm here with another candidate, Scott Crise, one of our 8 candidates running for the, one of our 7 candidates running for the 3 open seats in the SPS Board of Education. Sir, once again, I just ask that you do the best you can to educate our voters while being succinct, as we are a bit strapped for time. Let's start off with your vision. What is your vision for education in our community? What unique skills or background do you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to meet with you today. I'm Scott Crise, and I'm manager of technical services for Associated Electric Co-op. My wife, Martha, and I moved here 21 years ago from Chicago area with 2 daughters that were 2 and 4 at the time. I'm passionate about education because I've seen firsthand how education can change the future of a child in the community as a whole. I make sure every student has the tools that they need to succeed. I served on the Sequiota, Persian, and Glendale PTAs, and I started the Watchdog Dads program at Sequiota to help dads and grandfathers become more involved in the classroom. I was on the board of Foundation for Springfield Public Schools when we started the Back to School campaign, which is still going today. And I recently served on the Transportation Expansion Work Group. I saw firsthand the passion of the teachers and staff and how they cared about education. So,
sir, school district, item number 1 is definitely the pandemic. School districts continue to be faced with decision-making difficulties. What do you see as the role of board education in addressing these pandemic challenges?
Oh, the pandemic challenges in particular, those are going to be tough. What we need to do is, in my case for joining the board, is my business background and being able to look at the data, being able to make sure that we look at all data and make sure that we've taken everybody's thoughts and concerns into account. And that means talking to the teachers, talking to the parents, talking to the staff and administration, and ultimately evaluating the data and trying to take as many biases out as we can to address the COVID situation. It's going to be a most challenging thing coming back, especially next fall. Hopefully by then everybody will have vaccines. We'll be in 5 days a week because my feeling is you want the students in the classroom.
Sir,
you also want safety, and you want students and the teachers to be safe.
Discuss something that SPS did right in the virtual remote plan, and maybe something you'd like to see improvement on.
Well, something I think they did right is that they did look at the data. They did keep in touch with the Greene County and the other school districts and the other schools like MSU, OTC in the area, and kept a dialogue with them. And then also, they're able to go out and talk to the teachers and talk to the staff and to get their input as well. However, there were concerns, and I think there were some differences between what the teachers wanted and what the staff wanted. So maybe they could have gone out and met with them earlier on and gotten their input earlier than.
Well, let's talk about input, because we have a new superintendent that needs to be chosen by SPS this coming spring. What qualities, in your opinion, should that leader possess? What's an issue you feel like the new leader should tackle first?
Well, the qualities include being able to, or having the experience, of course, leading a large school district. And also, I think this person needs to have experience building rapport with the staff and with the teachers. He or she's got to go out and meet with the community, similar to what Dr. Youngman did in the first 100 days, is going out and meeting with all the staff and teachers and getting their input. And he's got to take a deep dive into the data for the school district to make sure he knows what needs to be, where we are now and what needs to be improved. He's got to do a deep dive into the 5 focus areas, making sure we provide learning support for student success, making sure we empower the teachers, leaders, and support personnel, making sure that we are fiscally responsible both for the operating budget and the Proposition S. We got a large, bond that was passed a couple of years ago, $190 million. He's got to have a good understanding of that. He's got to be able to communicate and engage the community, and he's got to focus on equity and diversity at the same time.
Well, speaking of community, how might the city council work with the school district to address educational disparities where school success is tied to where you live within the city?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we need to have that equity in all parts of the city. They need to have equal access to teachers, equal access to good teachers, and equal access to workforce development as well. We need to prepare, all students for living and working in a global economy, and it's just not students that live in a certain part of the Springfield area. So we got to work closely with the chamber and with the city council. With all parts of the community, all businesses within the community as well.
What's your opinion on the ongoing diversity and inclusion training for SPS staff, whether that's the SPS itself or the council concerning SPS?
Right. And with equity and diversity, we do create and sustain a learning environment that supports equity and diversity through the development of staff. That is the training and expanding staff diverse workforce, enhancing academic support systems and culturally relevant curriculum, while promoting increased engagement and advocacy of underrepresented, under-resourced students. In particular, the training that they received most recently, I wasn't in favor of it, to be honest with you. And I think it can be improved.
A majority of teachers end up leaving the profession within 5 years of starting. What's your plan, if there is one, to retain teachers in SPS?
Well, they're the greatest strength of our public schools, are our teachers, and we need to be able to attract and maintain quality teachers. We need to consider increasing salaries and benefits. Looking through the data, we're in the below 50% of the salaries that they receive, which I don't support that. I think it needs to be higher. I do like their incentive, for early notification of, resignation or retirement. It's a benefit. It allows staff to get to the market earlier, and than other districts to recruit the best talents. And the new teachers must have support, including providing mentors to them. And the district must provide leadership and professional development opportunities, and must continue to recognize the top teachers who excel and provide meaningful incentives to help teachers reach their goals.
Mr. Crise, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and we wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great
All right, we are here with Brandy Van Antwerp, who is running for one of the 3 open seats among the 7 candidates. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
What is your vision for education in our community? What unique skills or background do you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
My vision is an education for all and an inclusion and equity amongst all of our students. I am a product of Watkins Elementary here in Springfield. I was born in Springfield. In the end of 5th grade, we moved away about an hour and a half away to a tiny little rural town for my dad's business. But I still have held Springfield dear to my heart. I moved away for college and came back after college, and just Springfield is my home. That's always what I've claimed, is Springfield. And my belief, or my why behind running for school board, is not for accolades or power or anything of the sort, quite honestly. It's to be there for the kids who need us most. And my son is my beginning of my why. My oldest is 11. He's in 6th grade at Central Scholars. And while he's a gifted learner, he also has behavioral delays. And we learned very early on at about age 4 that our son had additional needs. And we advocated for him through therapy. And we learned as we got him into SPS that we needed to work with the school and learned how to be great advocates for him. Since then, he has done very well and has learned several skills that have helped him with his education. And we continue to stay extremely involved in our school. But also we have a 7-year-old son, and now we are foster parents to 2 young boys, 8 and 3. So one of them is also in Springfield Public Schools, and the youngest is in preschool right now.
Ma'am, the number one problem for these school districts right now is the pandemic, for sure. They continue to be faced with decision-making issues in response to it. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education in addressing these challenges?
So as a governing board, it's important that the board is there to help provide advice or some leadership, but also to allow the superintendent their job and their job opportunity to make the decisions that are necessary for the school district itself. I think that no matter what anyone had done this last year, there would be parties who would be upset with the decisions that were made. It's not a win-win. It's a terrible time to be in a school district right now because we all worry about our children and we want them to have access to education, but we also battle that or kind of weigh it out with the need for their health. So I think what SPS has done in this last year has been pretty, while it's not without controversy or discussion, I think they did a really good job of trying to balance the two of providing education the best that they could in the time that they could with a small amount of time to react to a pandemic that we weren't expecting. And then also to ensure that we're trying to keep our kids healthy and trying to roll out from fully virtual to a hybrid of our educational system.
Let's stay on the subject. Discuss something that SPS did right, in your opinion, and the virtual remote plan, and maybe something you'd see room for improvement.
Okay, well, this is just a personal opinion, but I work at Cox Health. I'm our grants administrator at the foundation, and I am daily faced with the numbers that we see with COVID. So I am acutely aware of the concerns that we had with it. I think they did a really good job of trying to stay on top of communication in letting families know what was happening next and trying their hardest to make the right decision for our schools. I know that comes with differing opinions, and not all people will agree with me on that. But I think they did a really good job of trying to balance the needs. I do know from families that the distance learning is not easy. I know for myself, it's not easy. It was a struggle to try to be working from home and taking care of my kids and keeping them on all of their classes. I understand what that struggle looks like. And I was fortunate to be able to, have those days to work from home. And I appreciate that opportunity from my employer. But I also think that there were frustrations with families not understanding maybe the why behind it sometimes. So transparency is absolutely essential in our communication with families and letting them know exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and letting them know as quickly as possible.
Well, we have a new superintendent that will be chosen by SPS this spring. What qualities should that leader possess? And what's an issue you feel the new leader should tackle first?
Okay. I think that it's really important that a leader is one that's empowering and one that really brings along the team with them. I think it's very important that leaders have transparency and communication and are not, I guess, in my leadership style, very much so that we try to bring along others with us and help them find their skills and build their skills for them so we can find emerging leaders for tomorrow and not just tackle things that are happening today. I do think that some of the focus right now should be on addressing concerns of the constituents within our community. So really, to me, one of the greater constituents that we have in numbers is our families, our parents, our guardians, whoever they may be, and whatever type of situation they may come from that are watching over our kids, that we communicate clearly with them. I know there's been a lot of frustration with transportation possibilities of changes and schedule changing for this coming year. And I think some of that could be addressed with a little bit more transparency and allowance of what I like to call a feedback loop. More opportunity for families to provide their insights into the struggles that will happen if we make these changes. Because it's the way the survey came out to the families most recently about transportation, it was choosing from options A, B, and C and not really allowing for input or more information from families. And I think that created some frustrations for a lot of the Springfield families.
Ma'am, how might the City Council work with the school district to address educational disparities where school success is tied to where you live within the city? You have about a minute and a half left.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, coming from the north side myself, I do see that there are some disparities in even structure, in facilities, in opportunities, but I think that the College and Career Academies is addressing that for our older students right now. I think the progress is promised with the facility updates, to which I was actually on the Friends of SPS committee to help pass that bond for improved school facilities. But I think that what we have in disparities right now could be addressed by our city council by continuing to advocate for our schools to have equity, so that it's not a north side versus a south side feeling of any type of opportunity that may be out there for the kids in educational opportunities, in extracurricular. I think we definitely need to look at opportunities for parents to have additional chances to get their kids engaged in things. When you have parents who work full-time, maybe work third shifts, can't get their kids everywhere that they want them to be when their children want to be more engaged in our school system.
And just 30 seconds on this last question, if you don't mind. What's your opinion on the ongoing diversity and inclusion training for SPS staff?
So I have not firsthand seen the curriculum itself, and I have had some folks ask me questions about it. I am an advocate for equity and inclusion, and I believe that we are in a time period in which we need to be talking more about this. And I have spoken to some board members who have gone through the training, and they admitted that this is it's an uncomfortable discussion, but it's a necessary one. And I think that we need to continue moving forward and trying to include all and work towards more equity.
Brandy Van Antwerp, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck.
Thank you.
We are with Jill Patterson, running to potentially fill one of these 3 vacancies on the school board among our 7 candidates. Ma'am, what is your vision for education in our community? What unique skills or background do you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
Well, I started my first term on this school board in April of 2015, and at the time could not believe that I got a 6-year term and thought it would last forever, but it has gone lickety-split. We have done so many innovative things to try to provide great educational opportunities for students, and there's more to do.
Ma'am, school districts continue to be faced with decision-making difficulties in response to the COVID pandemic. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education in addressing these challenges?
Well, you make a really good point, because the reality is nobody has dealt with anything quite like this before. So we're all doing the best we can, and we're not relying on something that has happened in the past. What I am doing is trying to educate myself, trying to listen, trying to consider what our best options are to keep our children safe, our staff and our teachers safe, and provide educational opportunities. So it's an ongoing process.
We'll discuss 1 or 2 things you think that SPS did right in the virtual remote plan dealing with this pandemic, and maybe a thing that, you know, there's room for improvement on.
Well, one of the things that worked out really well for us is that we had already prioritized putting devices in all the students' hands. So that made it much easier to be sure that they could all access virtual learning opportunities. So I'm very proud of that work. And that ended up being excellent timing that we'd already put that in place. I can't tell you that I think there's something that went wrong, but I can certainly tell you that I'm aware that the requirement that students not attend every day and do some things virtually from their homes put a great stress on some families for whom that was very difficult. And so I'm aware that this was not an easy time for a lot of our families. And is not. I didn't mean to imply it was over.
For sure. A new superintendent will be chosen by SPS this coming spring. What qualities should that leader possess in your opinion? And what's an issue you feel the new leader should tackle first?
Well, I have really enjoyed working with John Jungman and his leadership team, and I've learned so much from them. But I don't think that there's one skill in particular other than some experience, because you don't want to take on the largest school system in Missouri without having some experience in this regard in the past. I like an open mind for new ideas, a hard worker, someone who listens well and works well with a lot of different people who have good ideas about what we can do.
Well, how might the city council work, just to get kind of on a granular level here, with the school district in addressing the educational disparities where school success is tied to where you live within the city?
We are doing a lot to try to remove those barriers, and we have made a lot of plans in that regard around the facility master plan and certainly around our new transportation plan, as well as early childhood programs. We have excellent cooperative relationships with city council and a variety of other teams in the city. So I hope to continue that relationship and us do a lot of innovative things to try to make up for the disparities you mentioned.
Ma'am, what's your opinion on the ongoing diversity and inclusion training for SPS staff?
I'm a big proponent. I myself am learning a lot around this, and we have strategic plans in place, and we do need to make sure that our faculty and staff are educated and aware of what we're trying to achieve, because we can't do it from a top-down perspective. It has to be done by the boots on the ground.
Now, a majority of teachers end up leaving the profession within 5 years of starting. What's your plan to retain teachers in SPS?
Well, one of the things that we are doing with the innovations we've already put in place is to improve teacher pay. I am a big proponent of making sure our teachers feel supported and that we provide resources to help make their jobs easier, as well as more pay if we're able to do that.
Ma'am, last question to kind of bring us to a close here. If elected, what background or knowledge will you bring to the Board of Education that will benefit the students and staff of Springfield Public Schools?
Well, I like that question. For one thing, I've been doing it for 6 years and I've learned a lot, and I enjoy the service and the learning, and I hope to continue that. My husband and I have 3 children, and 2 of them have graduated from Springfield Public Schools while I've been on the board, and I have one who is still a student. So I feel like I can participate as a community member and as a parent and as a learner to keep moving forward with the innovations and just the sturdy educational experience we provide at SPS.
All right, Jill Patterson, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you luck.
Thank you, Andrew.
You bet. And we are joined by Kelly Byrne, who is running, one of our 7 candidates running for the 3 vacant SPS Board of Education seats. Welcome aboard, sir. And let me just start off with a question about your vision. What is your vision for education in our community? And what unique skills or background do you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
Yeah, thank you. So for starters, I'm from Springfield. I went to Cherokee and Kickapoo, played on the 2003 state championship basketball team at Kickapoo. And I also have 2 kids in the school district that go to Disney. I think I'm the only candidate that can say both of those things. So I'm very connected, very passionate with the Springfield community specifically. And in terms of vision, I just think we can do better. Our test scores have been falling. This past year was a very interesting year where we learned that a school board election can have much more impact on our life than we may have thought prior with the virtual schooling happening. And in terms of my vision, I've been very clear that I believe the #1 most important thing for determining the success of a child's education is the parents. #1, far and away. And I think we can do a better job communicating with the parents and involving the parents. I think #2 is the teachers and getting that one-on-one FaceTime and accountability that they have with the students is #2 in terms of priority in a child's education. #3 is the administrators. #4 is buildings and technology. And I think we've gotten those priorities a little bit mixed up.
In that answer just now, you made a reference to the pandemic that we're all struggling with, and school districts continue to be faced with difficult decision making in response to the COVID pandemic. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education in addressing these challenges?
Yeah, I don't think we are continuing to see too difficult of a decision. I think the decision's pretty easy at this point with the information that we know. I'm shocked it's not being talked about more. We're still doing these virtual Wednesdays, and I don't believe there's any reason. There's really no science behind it that one day a week of cleaning is going to do a darn bit of good in terms of COVID. It's really more just a smoke signal, I guess, or a virtual signal, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's honest. I don't think it's based on anything factual. And we need to get the kids back in the class 5 days a week.
Well, you've already pre-answered the next question, because we like to ask what's something that you think SPS did right in the virtual remote plan they've been adopting recently. And you just mentioned something they could have done better, but if you want to mention something else, you're welcome to.
Boy, it's hard for me to say because I didn't have the information that they had when they made those decisions. And I think last summer there were probably some tough decisions to be made, and I think they maybe took the easy way out. And that's probably true with our governmental leadership on a lot of different levels. They were forced with a decision where there were going to be people upset on both sides. And I think what we landed on was kind of an easy solution, when the hard solution would have been to get the kids back into class as soon as we could have. The hard solution would have been what some of the other communities did, where they didn't have the kids at home, where they had them in the classroom. I think that was the tough decision.
And as far as moving into the new superintendent, because we're going to have a new superintendent chosen by SPS this spring. In your opinion, what qualities should that leader possess? And what's an issue you feel the new leader should tackle first?
Yeah, in terms of qualities, obviously leadership is key for that position. We're the largest school district in the state, and that should give us plenty of opportunity to find a person who's fully qualified to do this job. We have the resources to do that. I really look forward to working with that person. What could they do better? I think communication. I think the school district has really botched that, particularly recently. Last summer, there was a survey that went out to parents and teachers regarding getting kids in the classroom, what to do about COVID. The response of, I believe, 7,000-ish parents which is a fantastic response of 23,000+ kids in the district. Having a 7,000 parent response was fantastic. And it was overwhelmingly in support of getting the kids in the classroom. Teachers, the same thing. They said, we want to be in the classrooms. Those were between like 95 and 99% on response towards getting them in the classroom. And then the district proceeded with rolling out this 2-day hybrid model. Now, whether or not you believe that was the right decision, this was a horrible look for communication. And I think it really punched a lot of holes in the trust between the parents and the teachers in terms of communication with the administration. And I think we've got a hole to dig out of, and we can start with the new superintendent and digging out of that hole.
Well, how might the city council work with the school district to address educational disparities, where school success is tied to where you live within the city?
Well, opportunity clearly needs to be equal. And I think we can all agree on that. And I look forward to looking into those opportunities and how we can improve them. There's probably some places that we can improve there, and we should always be looking to improve. But we shouldn't be so quick to determine causality of why that issue is. And I would go back to my list of what's most important in a child's education. It's parents number 1, teachers number 2, administrators number 3, buildings and technology are last. Building fancy new buildings and having so much money sunk into technology where the kids pretty much teach themselves on these Chromebooks or learning platforms isn't the answer. We need more one-on-one engagement with the teachers. We need more communication with the parents, and we need to be empowering the parents at home to be reinforcing the education and what we're learning in the classroom.
What's your opinion on the ongoing diversity and inclusion training in the SPS staff? Just want to let you know we got about a minute and a half left.
I'm really glad you asked that question. This has been a hot issue that we've made news for, and there's people on either side of this, and I don't think many people on either side of this aren't capable or willing of having an honest conversation about it. Personally, it came to my attention that the school district is teaching critical race theory in those diversity trainings, and I've seen some information on that. And when it comes to that specifically, I'm completely against the idea of critical race theory. And for anyone that doesn't know what critical race theory is specifically, I would urge you to not jump to any conclusions, but do what I've done and actually go straight to the source and learn about it. I am all in favor of equal opportunity and getting in front of these diversity issues and having honest conversations about them. Opposing the teaching of critical race theory, I want to be very clear, is not racist. There are a lot of components in critical race theory that can be specifically traced to Marxism. And I don't think that it's something we need to be teaching our kids. It's actually quite frightening of an idea to be putting into kids' head at such an early age.
Kelly Byrne, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck in the campaign to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are now joined by Daniel Ogunyemi. He is one of our 7 candidates running for the 3 vacant spots on the SPS Board of Education. Thank you for joining us, sir. So let's start off with your vision. What is your vision for education in our community? And what unique skills or background do you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
Sure, thank you. I think the overall vision is that every student can have a high quality education. And that is not just, that looks like many different things. So it's definitely quality of teachers, it's definitely the classroom culture and the classroom atmosphere. But it's also making sure that these families of all backgrounds are taken care of and have the resources that they need to succeed and thrive. And so one of the things that we found out is that, for example, internet access was a hindrance for some students having to do virtual learning. And so just to make sure that we are rallying around these individuals, these students, these families as community members, to ensure that these students can show up and be them full selves and to have a high quality education and define success, how that looks like. My unique skill set is I do have experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's not just through trainings, that's not just through whatever people think about that as, it's finding out what those barriers are for anyone. We all likely face some type of barriers. And so how can I advocate best for students and families as they enter into the classroom?
Okay, sir, I do want to encourage you to speak up just a little bit more so our listeners and our viewers can hear you a little bit better. Thank you so much for the first question. And to follow up, obviously the biggest problem we have right now is the COVID pandemic. School districts continue to be faced with difficult decision-making regarding it. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education in addressing these challenges?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest roles is being that advocate with the community, being that liaison. The community elects us, and so it's going to be up to us to ensure that the community remains well informed, but also that we are receiving input from the community that will in turn reflect the decisions that we make, that we can make the most informed decisions. So I believe the board is to be, first of all, that liaison between the community and the schools in regards to COVID and all the things that, you know, we're all struggling, we all are worried. So making sure that people have a voice and that they know someone is going to at least hear them out and try to consider their opinions. And I think the other thing is just making sure that we are keeping the students, the families, the administrators, the teachers top of mind and their best interests at heart, with a special emphasis on the kids that we'll be serving.
And discuss something you think that SPS did right in the virtual remote plan they've adopted over the past year, and maybe something you could see some room for improvement on.
Sure, I think the ability to just pivot, there's everybody's favorite word, to doing 100% virtual for pretty much the entire school was fantastic. They handled it with grace, they handled it with professionalism, And they were able to see about those inequities that I mentioned earlier for some students that may not even have internet access. I think one of the things that perhaps could have been done a little bit better is just that transparency. I heard from a lot of parents that they felt like these administrators were just making decisions on a whim and they weren't necessarily sure of the process. And while everybody can't peek behind the curtain and while everybody, it's not the expectation that the administrators let parents and the community know every little thing that they do, there perhaps could have been a little bit more room for more transparency.
Sir, a new superintendent will be chosen by SPS this spring. What qualities do you think that leader should possess? What's an issue you feel the new leader should tackle first?
I think for one, it has to be someone who is excited about public schools, which sounds kind of simple, which sounds weird, but there's definitely an attack on public schools. There are people that are not happy with the education. There are not people that are happy with the Springfield public schools being a larger school district. And even at the state level, there's some plans or some efforts to try to divert funds from public schools. So someone that's going to come in and be an energetic champion about what public schools means for education, what it means for the community, and being able to articulate that and maintain that high level of energy. I think one of the things that I definitely want to make sure this new superintendent is going to have on their minds is mental health and diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is still this divide in our community with North versus South side. And while I believe there have been intentional efforts, not only from the school system, but with the community to lessen these gaps and to address these things, I do believe that it still exists and is showing up in our school system. So hopefully I want to be able to hold this new superintendent accountable for those types of efforts, as well as ensuring that our children have access to mental health resources that they can show up and be them full selves.
Well, that actually feeds directly into the next question I was going to ask you. In your opinion, how might the city council work with the school district to address these educational disparities you mentioned, where school success is often tied to where you live within the city?
Community is everything. It really doesn't make any sense that that there might even be this idea that we're not collaborating on a high level such as this. I think sometimes there's this disconnect to where people understand that I've had people move to town or come into town, and even where they're showed houses based on their background. I've heard people move here and they're being told, well, you don't want to live on the north side of town. You don't want to live in this particular area because of X, Y, Z. And I think we have to change that narrative. And that's going to be up to people that are elected. There's going to be other members of the community. There's going to be other professions that we might not engage all the time. We have to make sure that type of narrative no longer exists. And we also have to make sure that we're putting our money where our mouths are. We have to make sure we're providing the resources, that we're collaborating, that we're understanding each other's agendas, and that we're going to move forward together, because the public school system is only going to be as strong as this community is at supporting it.
What's your opinion, sir, on the ongoing diversity and inclusion training for SPS staff?
It's necessary. It's something that we cannot get away from. It's something that we should not get away from. And it's something that we have to have. I think what needs to happen, and where perhaps my expertise can come in, is with that community piece and helping people understand what this means. Oftentimes we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and for some people, this raises a red flag. They don't like to hear these things. They think it's a direct attack. They think it's more divisive. And the truth of the matter is, diversity, equity, and inclusion is for all of us. It's not just about all the demographics, all the identifiers, all the unique characteristics of us. It's for every last one of us. But the fact remains that inequities and disparities exist based on some populations. And so it's an all boats, all tides right, all boats. I think that's the saying, right? Where when one population or one sublet is put on a more of an equal playing field by addressing those gaps and disparities, then everybody else has more of an opportunity to thrive as well. And it makes us look better together. So I think that's necessary. I think the unprofessionalism that specifically for the incident that happened, that someone secretly recorded the training, that has to be addressed, and because that put other people at safety, they're at risk, and their safety compromised. So that has to be addressed, and we have to make sure that we are ensuring that everybody understands that diversity, equity, and inclusion for everybody, and this is an opportunity for us to move forward as a community.
Sir, a majority of teachers end up leaving the profession within 5 years of starting. What's your plan to retain teachers in the SPS?
We have to make them feel like they're important. I know we recognize them via social media. We do a lot of other things. And I'm of the impression if for whatever reason we can't raise the budget, so if we're not getting the state appropriations, if the feds are not giving what they said, if we're not able to raise salaries, which I think is right? Most people like to be compensated fairly. Most people like to be compensated like their peers are. So if we are not able to do that for whatever reason, then it has to be the absolute best culture that can exist anywhere else. What does that mean? That means the teachers feel like that they are a part of decision making, that decisions that involve them, they're able to give their feedback, and not only give their feedback, but feel like it's actually taken into account. They're able to integrate into our community. So our community is hearing from them, our community is celebrating them. I think they are just as important as healthcare workers because they are the ones that are basically raising our kids for many hours of the week in their lives, and they have a huge impact. So I think we have to make sure that our teachers know that they are respected, they are loved, they are cared for, and that's just done through the culture.
Daniel Oganyemi, thank you so much for joining us and best of luck on your campaign, sir.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
You bet. We are joined by Dr. Maryam Mohammadkhani. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am. We want to start off with your vision as you are running as one of 7 candidates for 3 open seats on the SPS Board of Education. What is your vision for education in our community? What unique skills or background do you have that will guide your decision-making as a member of our Board of Education?
Well, I have to address why I'm running first so that I can get to that. I'm a parent, I'm a school volunteer, and as a physician, I've seen firsthand some of the changes that have taken place over the last few years, and I am becoming increasingly alarmed with the direction of our district. I think that we have an achievement gap, and I'm worried about the health and the happiness of our students and our teachers. I'm specifically very worried about the deleterious effects that are associated with excessive screen time in our children. And I worry that our teachers are being marginalized and that they will no longer serve as role models and leaders for our students.
Well, at the end,
in terms of my vision, I'm sorry that was so I have this unique skill. I have to say that I'm very capable of acknowledging deficiencies. And I would like to invite my fellow board members to do the same. And I think that if we can do that, if we can be our own harshest critics, then we can realize that the only way to serve our students is to be more effective leaders and to govern more effectively. And to do that, my vision is I want to improve student achievements. And to do that, we have to start with a culture of transparency and then move on to accountability.
We would like to get your point of view on the COVID pandemic. School districts have been continued to be faced with difficult decisions there. What do you see as the role of Board of Education in addressing these challenges?
I think the Board of Education, and so we're a very large district. We are the largest district in Missouri. And so it's really hard, and we have a huge issue with lots of problems like poverty. And what happens is we try to be jack of all trades and master of none in our board because it's so massive. And so what I'd like to do, and so I feel that I would be a really great voice in this regard, we have to divide and conquer. And so what I see lacking is a commitment to bringing experts to the table because there's so many things we have to evaluate. So COVID being one of them. We have an obligation to do the research and look at the data and very bravely move forward and make decisions that we think are right for our students. And to do that, we need board members that are committed to becoming experts, each of them in a different field. So then when we come together, we can expertly govern. We have a lot of data that came from other countries during the summer that told us that it was safe for our students to re-enter into schools. Since then, we now have data within the United States that tells us it is safe to go back into schools. So if you're asking my opinion as a physician, I'm telling you it is safe to go back into schools 5 days a week. I feel that following the Board of Education meetings throughout the summer, following and right into after school started, this issue was never addressed by the board. So my fear is what happened is that the board simply stepped aside because this was such a big decision and they weren't prepared to make it. And I think that the decision fell into the hands of the district. Here's a great example of where the board did not govern effectively. We can't have that. We have to make sure we look out for our students. We can't look at what's happening around the country. We have to look at what the needs of our students are in our district.
Speaking of which, discuss one or two things that SPS did right during the virtual remote plan they've adopted, and maybe an area for improvement that you'd see.
Well, I'm going to have to go straight to the areas of improvement. And with all due respect, we have a lot of room for improvement. I'm not sure that your listeners or your viewers are aware that our district has been in a decline for the last decade, and it has become precipitous in the last 5 years. And I've done quite a bit of research to try to examine what the root cause of this is. And so while our district tried to really combat and bring students education, I think what is lacking is this understanding of why we were in decline. Our students did not need online platforms. Our students needed distance learning. And there's a big difference between online platforms and distance learning. So we have, our students all have Chromebooks. I'll tell you one thing they did do, which was great, which is internet access. That was always a huge issue with these Khajiits, and it wasn't really effective. So bringing internet and the capability of distance learning. But what didn't pan out is distance learning. Distance learning is you get on your computer, you boot it up, you log into the class, and you see your teacher. It's the same teacher, you're just not in the classroom. You are engaging with your teacher. Your teacher is giving you assignments. You are completing those. You have an opportunity to ask questions. What happened though, for the most part, is online platforms, which is not learning from a teacher, it's learning from a computer. And I'm really concerned because it is those connections that we lose that contribute to the decline of student performance. They contribute to the health of our students, their mental health of our students. And that is a real issue that has been in place, and COVID has just exacerbated it. I'm really concerned about the whole issue of technology platform. I think that we have a lot of room for improvement. And I do have to add one thing. This is what I want to see the board do when we recover from COVID. And this is going to be such a struggle. I think we have to learn from our failures and our successes. That is how we bring progress. That's how we become better. We did some things really good. We did some things not so good. And the data is amassing globally. Everybody wants to know. Now what do we do? Now that we tried this new model of learning, what parts of it do we want and what parts of it do we want to leave behind? I think we need a board that is brave enough to say, this is where we failed, and acknowledge those failures. This is where we succeeded. We can't go along with status quo. If we do, our students will lose.
Ma'am, we're down to about a minute, and we have a new superintendent that's going to be chosen this coming spring. What qualities should that leader possess? What's an issue you'd like to see the new leader tackle first?
All right. This leader has to have grit and has to be willing to understand the history of our district and work really hard. And the qualities or the things that I ask for are greater transparency and greater accountability. And I think the number one priority objective would be to increase student achievement, to close the academic gap that we are seeing. And to do that, we have to work together. And like I said, I would like the new superintendent to reevaluate the role of technology. I would like the new superintendent to re-empower our teachers. I want to see better administrative relationships. Oh, is that a zero? Does that mean I'm out of time?
Yeah. Would you like to finish your thought, ma'am?
I saw your hand go up. I think that we need to work better together and focus on the problems that we have in our community. We have an issue with poverty. We can't look at what's happening everywhere else. This is a real cultural issue that we have to battle. And I want a superintendent that is willing to stand up for our students and not look at what sounds right or what looks right, but really do what is right for our students in our district. The very life of our community depends on it. Public education is the cornerstone of our community. And I'm really worried about Springfield. I'm worried about our community's health. We're not growing compared to the surrounding suburbs, the cities surrounding us. I worry about not just our students and teachers. I worry about our entire community, our future commerce, the direction we're going. And this is why I'm stepping up, because I think I have a lot to offer. And primarily it's my ability to see where we've gone off track. And I have the grit to get us back on track with the right superintendent.
Dr. Maryam Mohammadkhani, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you for having me.